I returned home after a 3-month trip across Europe, the trip of my dreams, the gift I'd promised myself after 40 years of working without a break. I held the keys to my house in my hands, photos of Paris on my phone, and a heart full of stories to tell my children. But when the cab turned the corner onto my street, I saw something that froze my blood. A huge sign hammered into the front yard of my house, giant red letters screaming, "Sold." I thought it was a joke, some neighborhood mistake, a stupid mix-up. I stumbled out of the taxi, dragging my suitcase across the wet pavement. I kept looking, and then I saw them. My furniture, my entire life, stacked in cardboard boxes on the soaked lawn, my mother's rocking chair, photos of my parents, my books, my clothes, all thrown out like trash waiting for the morning pickup. I ran toward the door, put the key in, but it wouldn't turn. They had changed the lock. I pounded on the door, shouting, but no one answered. The house was empty, completely empty. The curtainless windows reflected my shattered image back at me. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking so hard I almost dropped it. I called Ryan, said my eldest son. It rang 5 times before he picked up. I heard background noise, music, laughter, as if he was at a party. "Hey, Mom," he said with a voice so casual it broke my heart. "Ryan, what happened to the house?" I yelled. "Why is there a sold sign? Where are my things? Why did you change the lock?" There was a long silence, too long. Then I heard him move away from the noise, a door closing. "Yeah, so." That's all he said. "We finally sold the house, Mom. It was the best thing for everyone." I felt the floor open up beneath me. "What? You sold the house? It's my house. I live there. You had absolutely no right." "Look, Mom, don't be so dramatic," he retorted, using that tone he always used when he wanted to make me feel bullish. "The house was going to be our inheritance anyway. Melissa and I decided it was better to sell it now. We needed the money. You don't need it anymore. You're old. You can live anywhere. Besides, you signed the papers before you left. Don't act surprised. If you're watching this video, please subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it has reached." "I never signed anything," I screamed. "Ryan, this is illegal. You can't sell my house without my permission." I heard a dry laugh on the other end. "It's done, Mom. The money's already been spent. Your stuff is outside. Deal with it. If you wanted to keep anything valuable, you should have thought about it before you took off on a 3-month vacation like a queen while we were here struggling with the bills." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was my son, the boy I raised, the one I gave everything to, the one I held when he had pneumonia at age 5, the one I hugged every night when he had nightmares. "Ryan, please," I whispered, feeling tears burn my eyes. "Don't do this to me. I'm your mother. Where am I supposed to live? Well, what am I going to do?" "I don't know, Mom. Figure it out. We already solved our problems. Oh, and don't call again. I need space. This is for the best for the family." And he hung up, just like that. He left me standing in the rain in front of the house where I raised my children, where I lived for 32 years, where I buried my husband, where I celebrated every birthday and every Christmas. And now it wasn't mine. I called Melissa, my daughter. Maybe she could explain. Maybe there had been a terrible misunderstanding. Melissa had always been more sensitive, closer to me, or so I thought. She answered on the second ring. "Mom, I already know why you're calling," she said before I could speak. "Ryan told me you were going to make a scene. Melissa, my love, I need you to explain what happened," I pleaded. "How could you sell the house? That's my house, but you had no right." "Mom, stop it," she replied with annoyance. "You're old. You're 62. You don't need a house that big. Ryan and I needed that money. We had debts. You went on a trip to Europe like you were swimming in cash while we couldn't pay the rent here. But I saved up for that trip for 5 years," I cried. "I worked double shifts at the hospital. I sacrificed my whole life for you. And this is how you repay me, by stealing my house?" "Oh, Mom, don't be dramatic. We didn't steal anything. The house was going to be ours when you died anyway. We just moved things along. You should be happy that your children can live better. What, would you prefer we ended up on the street?" "I can't believe you're saying this," I whispered. "Well, believe it," she said coldly. "Look, Mom, it's done. The papers are signed. The house is sold. The money is spent. End of story. Now, stop calling because I'm busy and find somewhere to live, because those boxes aren't going to stay there forever. The city will throw them out tomorrow if you don't remove them." "Melissa, please," I started to say, but she had already hung up. I stared at the phone as if it were a strange object. My own children, the people I loved most in this world, had left me on the street like garbage, without remorse, without compassion, as if I were worth nothing. The rain fell harder now. My boxes were getting soaked. I watched the water seep through the poorly sealed cardboard, ruining the photographs, the documents, the memories of a lifetime. I knelt on the wet grass and tried to cover the boxes with my body, but it was useless. There were too many. I couldn't save them all. Eleanor, I heard a voice behind me. It was Denise, my lifelong neighbor. She was running toward me with a large umbrella. My God, what happened? Why is your stuff out here? I couldn't speak. I just cried and cried, clinging to a box that held my children's toys from when they were small. Denise knelt beside me, covering me with the umbrella. Come on, you can't stay here, she said softly. Let's go to my house. We'll figure out what to do with the boxes later. I have nowhere to go, I sobbed. My children sold my house, Denise. They just dumped me here. I have nothing. She hugged me tightly, and I completely collapsed in her arms. Come with me now, she said. You're not alone. Let's go. That night, I slept on Denise's couch, or tried to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the sold sign. I heard Ryan's cold voice telling me, deal with it, as if I were nobody. I saw Melissa's indifference, as if I were a nuisance, not her mother. I got up at 5 a.m, my body broken and my soul in pieces. Denise was already awake, brewing coffee. She sat with me in silence for a long time until I could finally speak. I don't understand how it came to this, I told her, my voice ragged. I gave them everything. I worked double shifts for years so they could go to good schools. I stayed up all night when they were sick. I put my life aside for them, and this is how they repay me. Denise squeezed my hand. Sometimes children turn into people we don't recognize, she said softly. But you don't deserve this, Eleanor. No one does. Today we're going to get your boxes before the city throws them out, and then you're going to talk to a lawyer. This cannot stand. She was right. I couldn't remain paralyzed in my sadness. I needed to act. I called work to say I'd be late, and Denise and I went to rescue what was left of my life from those soaked boxes. Many things were already ruined, blurred photos, illegible documents, clothes smelling of mildew. We managed to save a few items and stored them in Denise's garage. Then I went to the bank. I needed to understand exactly what had happened. The teller checked my account and turned pale. Mrs. Taylor, she said, visibly uncomfortable, your account was emptied 2 months ago. Everything was transferred to an account under the name of Ryan Villegas. How much? I asked, though I already knew the answer would destroy me. $43,000, she replied. My life savings, the money I had set aside for my old age, for emergencies, to have some peace in my later years, all stolen by my own son. I felt like I couldn't breathe. How could he do that? I whispered. He didn't have access to my account. The teller cleared her throat awkwardly. It says here that you signed an authorization giving him complete access to your accounts. It has your signature. I never signed that, I said desperately. I need to see that document. She showed it to me. It was a blurry photocopy of a bank authorization. The signature looked like mine, but I knew I hadn't made it. Ryan had forged my signature. I left the bank, staggering. Not only had they taken my house, they had stolen every last penny. I was completely ruined at 62 without a home, without savings, without anything. I called my sister Kathy. She lived in another state, but we had always been close. Surely she would help me. Listen, Eleanor, she said after I told her everything. I don't want to get involved in problems between you and your children. Besides, Ryan called me yesterday. He told me his side. He says you gave him permission to sell the house, and now you regret it and want to blame him. Kathy, that's a lie, I shouted. He forged documents. He robbed me. Look, I don't know what to believe, she replied, her voice strained. But I have my own problems. I can't give you money or let you live here. I have 3 kids in college. I'm sorry. And she hung up. I called cousins, old friends, co-workers. Everyone had an excuse. Some believed me but couldn't help. Others clearly thought I was exaggerating, that I must have done something for my own children to treat me that way. People always assume that if your children turn their backs on you, it's because you were a bad mother. No one wants to believe that sometimes children are simply cruel. For 2 weeks, I lived on Denise's couch. She never complained, but I saw the fatigue on her face. She had her own life, her own problems. I couldn't abuse her kindness forever. One night, I accidentally overheard a phone conversation she was having with her daughter. Yes, she's still here, Denise was saying in a low voice. I don't know for how much longer. I feel terrible, but this can't be permanent. I had to leave. I couldn't become a burden. The next day I looked for jobs. I had been a nurse for 40 years, but I had retired 6 months ago. I needed something urgently, anything. I found a receptionist position at a dental clinic. They paid $900 a month. It was ridiculously little, but I had no choice. I also found a room to rent, a tiny room in a shared house with 3 other people. The bathroom was shared, the kitchen was a mess, and the walls were so thin I could hear every conversation of the neighbors. It cost $500 a month. That left me with $400 for food, transport, and everything else. I'd gone from owning my own house to living worse than I had when I was 20. The first night in that room, I cried until I had no tears left. I looked around, an old bed, a tiny closet, a window overlooking a dirty alley. This was my life now. This was what my children had left me. I felt humiliated, destroyed, invisible. But something changed in me that night. A cold rage began to grow in my chest. I wasn't going to let them destroy me completely. I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. Ryan and Melissa thought they had beaten me, that they had left me without options. They were wrong. The next day I started my job at the clinic. I smiled at patients, answered phones at scheduled appointments. During breaks, I researched property law, document fraud, and signature forgery online. I took notes in a worn notebook. If my children had committed a crime, and I was sure they had, I was going to find a way to prove it. Denise visited me one afternoon after work. She brought me home-cooked food and hugged me tight. I'm proud of you, she said. Many people would have given up. You're fighting. I have no choice, I replied. Either I fight or I die, and I'm not giving them the pleasure of seeing me die. 3 months passed since my children left me on the street. 3 months of working at the dental clinic, living in that miserable room, eating the cheapest things I could find at the supermarket. I had lost almost 20 pounds. I had permanent dark circles, but inside I felt stronger than ever. Humiliation had turned into determination, pain into controlled fury. Every extra cent I had, I saved. I needed to hire a lawyer, a good one. I had consulted several, but they all asked for retainers I couldn't afford. $5,000 here, $3,000 there. I was barely making ends meet. One afternoon, while organizing papers at the clinic, I overheard the dentist talking to a patient about a complicated legal case he had recently won. My lawyer is excellent, he was saying enthusiastically. His name is Elias Cordero. He's the best I know. I wrote down the name. That night, I searched for Elias Cordero online. He had a small office downtown. The review spoke of a fair man who sometimes took pro bono cases for people without resources. I called the next day, shaking. A secretary answered. Law office of Mr. Cordero. Good morning. I need to consult with the lawyer, I said. It's urgent. They stole my house and my savings. Do you have the means to pay the fees? She asked directly. No, I admitted, feeling humiliated again. But I have a solid case. There was document fraud, signature forgery. Please, I just need him to listen to me. There was a long silence. Hold on a moment. I heard muffled voices on the other end. Finally, a deep masculine voice spoke. Mrs. Taylor, I'm Elias Cordero. My secretary tells me you have a complicated situation. Come in tomorrow at 4 in the afternoon, no commitment. We'll talk, and I'll see if I can help you. I barely slept that night. I prepared all the documents I had, the photos of my belongings thrown on the street, the cruel messages from Ryan and Melissa, the bank statements showing the theft of my savings, the supposed authorization with my forged signature. I had meticulously saved everything as evidence of my own nightmare. I arrived at the office 15 minutes early. It was a small but orderly place, walls filled with legal books, an antique dark wood desk. Elias Cordero was a man in his 50s, gray hair, a serious but not unkind gaze. Please sit down, ma'am, he said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. Tell me everything from the beginning. Don't rush. I have time. And I told him every detail. The trip to Europe I'd saved for 5 years, returning to my house being sold, the sold sign, my belongings on the street getting soaked in the rain, the call with Ryan where he told me, deal with it as if I were nothing, the discovery that they had emptied my bank account, the $43,000 stolen, the forged signature, the betrayal of my own children. As I spoke, Elias took notes without interrupting. His expression grew harder with every detail. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment, looking at the documents I had brought. Finally, he looked up. "Mrs. Taylor," he said firmly, "this is not only morally repugnant, it is criminal. Your children committed fraud, forgery of documents, misappropriation of funds, and possibly other crimes. So can I do something?" I asked, feeling hope for the first time in months. "You can't just do something, you must do something," he replied. "What they did to you is illegal on every possible level. The house could not be sold without your genuine consent. The bank transfer was fraudulent. All of this has a legal solution. And you can help me?" I whispered. Elias leaned back in his chair and looked at me intently. "I'll be honest with you, ma'am. This case will take time. It will be painful because it involves your children, and it will require you to be very strong. Are you prepared to go all the way?" "I am prepared," I replied without hesitation. "They left me with nothing. They treated me like trash. They are no longer my children. They are criminals who need to pay for what they did." "Good," he nodded. "Then I'll represent you. We'll do this as follows. I won't charge you anything up front. We'll work the case, and when you recover what is yours, you will pay me a percentage. Does that sound fair?" It sounded more than fair. It sounded like a miracle. I accepted immediately. Elias extended his hand and I shook it, feeling that finally someone was on my side. In the following weeks, Elias worked like a man possessed. He requested all the documents for the sale of my house, asked for expert analysis of the forged signature. He obtained the complete bank records. He interviewed Denise as a witness to how my things were found on the street. He built a case that seemed like an unbreakable fortress. One day, he urgently called me to his office. "Eleanor, you need to see this," he said, pulling up his computer screen. He showed me Ryan's bank documents, strange movements, constant transfers to online betting sites, digital casinos, poker pages. "Your son has a serious gambling problem," Elias explained. "The $43,000 he stole from you was spent in less than 6 weeks on gambling." I felt like I couldn't breathe. All my money, the savings of 40 years of work, lost in stupid bets. "There's more," Elias continued, his expression grim. "Ryan took out loans from loan sharks. He owes over $30,000 to some very dangerous people. That's why he needed to sell your house so urgently. He needed to pay those debts, or they were going to hurt him." "So I was just a convenient solution," I said bitterly. "A way to save his own skin?" "Exactly," Elias confirmed. "And Melissa knew everything. There are messages between them coordinating the sale, splitting the money. She received $15,000 from the sale of your house. She used it to go on vacation to Cancun with her boyfriend while you were sleeping on a couch." The rage I felt at that moment was indescribable. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the coldness, the calculated cruelty. They had planned every detail while I, innocent as an idiot, was sending them postcards from Europe, telling them how happy I was. I had written, "I miss you so much, my loves. I can't wait to come back and hug you." And they were selling my life to pay for bets and vacations. "Eleanor," Elias said, pulling me out of my thoughts, "I'm filing the lawsuit this week. We are going to annul the sale of the house because it was fraudulent. We are going to recover your money, and we are going to press criminal charges against Ryan and Melissa for fraud and forgery. Are you sure you want to proceed?" "More sure than ever," I replied. "Let them face the consequences of what they did." That night, for the first time in months, I slept soundly. I dreamed I was in a courtroom and a judge slammed his gavel, declaring justice. I woke up with a strange feeling in my chest. It took me a moment to recognize it. It was hope. After so long in the darkness, there was finally a light at the end of the tunnel. The lawsuit was filed on a Tuesday morning. Elias called me at noon to confirm everything was in order. "The documents are registered," he said with satisfaction in his voice. "Now we just have to wait for your children to be notified. Prepare yourself, Eleanor, because they are going to react." "I don't care how they react," I replied. "I have nothing left to lose." But I was wrong. I still had something to lose, my peace of mind. 2 days later, my phone started ringing nonstop. It was Ryan. He called 7 times in a row. I didn't answer any. Then the messages started coming. Dozens of messages full of insults and threats. "You're ungrateful. After everything we did for you, you'll regret this. You're going to destroy your own family for money." I read every message with cold calm. It was fascinating to see how the victimizer became the victim when confronted. Ryan had ruined my life without remorse, but now that he faced consequences, I was the bad guy. Melissa also started calling. She left crying voicemails. Mom, please don't do this. We're your family. How can you report your own children? Think about what people will say. I blocked their numbers. I wasn't going to let myself be manipulated again, but they found other ways to contact me. They called the clinic where I worked. My boss told me uncomfortably that a young man had called, claiming I was his mother and that I was mentally ill, making up stories about thefts that never happened. Of course, I didn't believe him, my boss assured me, but I thought you should know. They also went to Denise's house. She told me furiously that Ryan had knocked on her door, demanding to know where I was living now. I told him it was none of his business and to leave before I called the police, Denise told me. That boy has something wrong in his eyes, Eleanor. He looked desperate. He is desperate, I confirmed. Rats always get fierce when they're cornered. Elias warned me that this was normal. When criminals see they are going to lose, they attack in every possible way, he explained. They will try to scare you, manipulate you, make you feel guilty, but you can't give in. If you give in now, everything will have been for nothing. I won't give in, I assured him. They can call 1,000 times. They can cry and threaten. I have made my decision. Weeks passed, and the case advanced. Elias obtained the expert report on my signature. The expert confirmed what I already knew. The signature on the sale documents and the bank authorization was fake. Someone had tried to imitate my handwriting, but there were clear differences in the pressure of the stroke, the inclination, and various technical details. It was irrefutable evidence of forgery. More shady details also surfaced. The buyer of my house, the businessman who had paid $200,000 for the property, but Ryan and Melissa had only declared they received $140,000. Where was the remaining $60,000? Elias investigated and discovered that the money had gone to an account in the Cayman Islands, tax evasion on top of everything else. Your children are not just thieves, Elias told me with a grave expression. They are stupid thieves. They left a trail of evidence so obvious that even a novice lawyer could win this case. They forged documents, evaded taxes, made illegal bank transfers. Everything is documented. They are going to lose, and they are going to lose badly. The day of the first hearing arrived. I dressed in a gray suit I had bought at a second-hand store. I wanted to look dignified, respectable. Denise accompanied me to the courthouse. You are not alone, she said, squeezing my hand. I'm here. Elias is here. Justice is on your side. Thank you, I whispered. I don't know what I would have done without you. We entered the courtroom and my heart almost stopped. There they were, Ryan and Melissa, sitting on the other side with their lawyer. It was the first time I'd seen them in almost 4 months. Ryan looked at me with pure hatred. Melissa was crying into a tissue, putting on a dramatic scene for the gallery. They disgusted me. They were acting like victims when they were the monsters. The judge entered and we all stood. He was an older man, about 65, with a serious expression. He sat down and reviewed the case documents. This is a very disturbing matter, he finally said. A mother reporting her children for fraud and theft. We will hear both sides. Ryan and Melissa's lawyer spoke first. He was a nervous young man who clearly knew he had a losing case. Your Honor, he began, my clients acted in good faith. Mrs. Taylor had given them verbal permission to sell the property. She was on an extended trip and couldn't manage her affairs. They were just trying to help. It was such a blatant lie that I almost laughed. Elias stood up. Your Honor, with all due respect, that is completely false, and I have evidence to prove it. He began presenting document after document, the forged signature, the handwriting analysis, the bank records showing the theft of my savings, the text messages where Ryan told me, deal with it, with total coldness, the photos of my belongings thrown on the street in the rain. The judge reviewed each document with increasing disapproval. He looked harshly at Ryan and Melissa. Do you have any proof of this alleged verbal permission? The lawyer stammered. No, Your Honor, but it was an informal family agreement. The judge slammed his gavel. An informal agreement does not authorize forging signatures or emptying bank accounts. This is fraud, counsel, criminal fraud. Melissa started crying harder. Mom, please, she cried out from her seat. I'm your mother. How can you do this to me? I'm sorry if we hurt you, but we don't deserve to go to jail. We're your family. I looked her directly in the eyes for the first time. You stopped being my family the day you threw me out on the street like trash, I said firmly. The consequences of your actions are not my problem. They are yours. The judge ordered silence. Mrs. Taylor, he said to me, and I understand this situation is emotionally devastating for you, but I need you to maintain your composure. Yes, Your Honor, I replied. I apologize. The judge nodded and continued reviewing the documents. After what seemed like an eternity, he spoke again. I have reviewed all the evidence presented, and my preliminary conclusion is clear. There was document fraud, there was signature forgery, there was misappropriation of funds. The sale of the property was illegal and therefore void. I order the initiation of a process to reverse the sale and return the property to its legitimate owner, Mrs. Eleanor Taylor. Furthermore, the judge continued, his voice severe, I order a full criminal investigation against Ryan Villegas and Melissa Villegas for the crimes of fraud, document forgery, and misappropriation. They are prohibited from contacting the victim under penalty of contempt. This hearing is suspended. We will meet again in 30 days with more evidence. He slammed the gavel and rose. Ryan stood up, shouting, This is unfair! She's our mother! She hates us! Security guards immediately approached him. Sir, control yourself or you will be removed, one warned. Melissa sobbed uncontrollably. Mom, I beg you, don't continue with this. I implore you. I walked out of the room without looking back. Denise hugged me tightly. You did it, she whispered. You won, Eleanor. Not yet, I replied, but we're on the right track. Elias came out behind us, smiling. That judge is on our side, he said. I saw his face when he reviewed the photos of your things on the street. He was furious. We have this case won. That night I returned to my tiny room, but I felt different. I no longer felt humiliated. I felt powerful, strong. I had confronted my abusers in a courtroom and had won the first battle, and this was just beginning. The following days were strange. On one hand, I felt a tranquility I hadn't experienced in months. The judge had validated my truth, had publicly recognized that I was the victim and my children were the criminals. On the other hand, I knew this was far from over. Ryan and Melissa would not give up easily, and I was right. Despite the restraining order prohibiting them from contacting me, they found ways to harass me indirectly. They started posting horrible things on social media. Melissa uploaded a long post on her public profile telling a completely fabricated version of events. My mother is destroying us for money, she wrote. She is accusing us of things we never did. She is sick and needs help, but prefers to ruin our lives. The greatest pain is being betrayed by the one who gave you life. The comments were filled with people who didn't know the real story, condemning me. What a horrible mother. Children always tell the truth. She must have been a terrible mother, and that's why they reacted that way. Every comment was a stab. I wanted to respond, defend myself, tell the truth. But Elias stopped me. Don't fall into that game, he warned. Social media is not a court of law. The only opinion that matters is the judge's. Let them talk. The truth will come out on its own. He was right, but it hurt just the same. Seeing my own children publicly defame me, knowing they were lying, was a new torture. Denise showed me that several distant relatives had shared Melissa's post, adding their own comments of support for her. Poor Melissa, what a cross to bear with a mother like that. Children don't lie about these things. It was unbearable, but then something unexpected happened. A second cousin of mine, Evelyn, who lived in Spain and whom I hadn't seen in years, commented on Melissa's post. That's strange what you're saying, Melissa, because your mother wrote to me 2 months ago telling me that you stole her house. She sent me photos of her things thrown on the street. She sent me screenshots of the cruel messages you sent her. Why are you lying publicly like this? Evelyn's comment unleashed a war. Other people began to question Melissa's version. Do you have proof of what you're saying? If your mom is lying, why are there photos of her furniture on the street? Something doesn't add up here. Melissa ended up deleting the entire post. Evelyn wrote to me privately that same night. Eleanor, I don't know everything that happened, but I know you're not a liar. If you need anything, count on me. I cried when I read her message, not from sadness, but from relief. Someone else believed me, someone else had seen the truth. I told Evelyn the whole story and she was horrified. Your children are delinquents, she told me directly. Don't feel guilty for rewarding them. You did the right thing. Her words gave me renewed strength. Meanwhile, the legal process advanced. The buyer of my house, the businessman who had paid the $200,000, was summoned to testify. Elias told me later that the man was furious. He hadn't known the sale was fraudulent, he had said. The sellers showed me documents that seemed legitimate. I paid in good faith. Now it turns out I could lose the property and the money. The businessman also sued Ryan and Melissa for fraud. He wanted to get his money back. This meant that my children now faced lawsuits from two sides, mine and the buyers. Elias smiled when he told me. They are sinking themselves, he said. Every day that passes, more evidence appears against them. It's almost funny to watch them dig their own grave. One day I received a call from an unknown number. I usually didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was a woman who identified herself as Kara, but not my sister. Mrs. Taylor, my name is Kara Mendez. I'm a private investigator hired by your lawyer. I need to speak with you about your son, Ryan. What about him? I asked, my heart pounding. We have been investigating his financial movements as part of the case, Kara explained, and we found something serious. Ryan has debts with loan sharks. You already know that, but what you didn't know is that those loan sharks are actively looking for him. He has a debt of $2,000 that he was supposed to pay 2 months ago. He didn't pay. Now they are threatening him and his sister too. I felt a mixture of emotions. On one hand, I couldn't help feeling a little satisfaction. Ryan had ruined my life for money, and now money was ruining him. It was poetic justice. On the other hand, and although I hated myself for feeling it, there was still a small part of me that was his mother, a part that worried. Is he in danger? I asked. Yes, Kara replied bluntly. These people don't play games. If he doesn't pay them soon, things could get very ugly. I thought you should know. Thank you for the information, I said, and hung up. I sat on my bed staring at the wall for hours. Should I care? Should I help him? He didn't help me when he left me on the streets. He stole everything from me and didn't care if I ended up sleeping under a bridge. I called Elias to tell him. Eleanor, I know it's hard, he said softly, but you have to understand something. Ryan created this situation. He chose to gamble his money. He chose to get into debt with criminals. He chose to steal from you to pay those debts. None of this is your responsibility. If you help him now, he will hurt you again. It's a pattern. You're right, I admitted. I can't save him. Not even if I wanted to. I don't have the means. 2 weeks later, the second hearing arrived. This time there were more people in the room. Journalists, some relatives. The case had gained attention because it involved a dramatic story. Mother, children, family fraud, betrayal. It was the kind of story people liked to follow. I felt exposed, but Elias reassured me. Let them see, he said. Let everyone see who your children really are. Ryan and Melissa arrived with a new lawyer. The previous one had resigned from the case, probably because he knew it was unwinnable. This new lawyer seemed more aggressive, more willing to fight dirty. When the judge opened the session, the lawyer asked for the floor immediately. Your Honor, my client Melissa wishes to make a statement. Melissa stood up. She wore a light green dress, her hair pulled back, minimal makeup. She looked vulnerable, fragile. It was all an act. Your Honor, she began, her voice trembling, I want to say that I deeply regret everything that happened. I know we made mistakes, but we did it because we were desperate. My brother has an addiction problem. He needed help. I tried to protect him. I know we made bad decisions, but we never meant to hurt our mother. We love her. Please don't take everything away from us. It was a perfectly calculated speech to generate pity. Some spectators in the room seemed moved, but the judge was not. Miss Villegas, he said, his voice hard, you didn't make mistakes. You committed crimes. You forged documents. You stole money. You left your mother homeless. And now you come here with rehearsed tears expecting compassion. You will not receive it from this court. Melissa sat down, crying. Ryan looked furious, but said nothing. His lawyer tried to argue that Ryan's addiction was a disease and that he deserved treatment, not punishment. Your Honor, my client needs rehabilitation, not prison. The judge interrupted him. Your client needs both because addiction does not justify destroying another person's life, especially his own mother's. Elias presented more evidence. He had found messages between Ryan and Melissa from months earlier when I was still in Europe. Messages where they planned the whole operation. It has to be fast, Ryan had written. We sell the house, pay my debts, split the rest. When she gets back, it'll be done. She won't be able to do anything. And Melissa had replied, what if she gets mad? Let her get mad. What's she gonna do? She's old now. We're her only family. She'll have to accept it. Reading those messages aloud in the courtroom was devastating. Hearing the coldness with which they had planned to destroy me, the way they had calculated every detail, the total contempt for my life, my well-being, my feelings. She's old now. As if because I was 62, my life was worth nothing, as if I were disposable. The judge listened to everything in silence. When Elias finished presenting the evidence, the judge took off his glasses and cleaned them slowly. Then he looked directly at Ryan and Melissa. In my 30 years as a judge, he said, his voice charged with contained emotion, I have seen many cases of family betrayal, but this one is particularly cruel. You not only stole money, you stole your mother's dignity. You left her literally on the street, and you did it without remorse. I have reviewed all the evidence, he continued, the messages, the forged documents, the testimonies. There is no doubt. You are guilty of multiple crimes. Therefore, I issue a preliminary sentence. The sale of the property is annulled. The house will be returned to its owner, Mrs. Eleanor Taylor. The stolen funds from her bank account must be fully restituted with interest, and you will face criminal charges that will be processed by the district attorney's office. This is not a decision I take lightly, but justice demands it. The gavel came down with a dry thud. Melissa screamed. Ryan pounded the table with his fist. His lawyer tried to calm him. Security guards approached. Mom, I beg you, don't continue with this. I implore you. I left the room without looking back. Denise hugged me tightly. You did it, she whispered. You won, Eleanor. Not yet, I replied, but we're going in the right direction. Elias came out behind us, smiling. That judge is on our side, he said. I saw his face when he looked at the photos of your things on the street. He was furious. We have this case won. That night I returned to my tiny room, but I felt different. I no longer felt humiliated. I felt powerful, strong. I had faced my abusers in a court of law and had won the first battle. And this was just the beginning. The following days were surreal. On one hand, good things were happening. The process of recovering my house was progressing well. Elias negotiated an agreement with the businessman. I would return $80,000 to him when I recovered the money from my children, and he would hand over the house without further trouble. It was fair. On the other hand, the harassment from Ryan and Melissa intensified in increasingly desperate ways. Melissa wrote me long, dramatic letters. Mom, I'm pregnant, one said. Your grandchild will be born in jail if you continue with this. Do you want that? Do you want your grandchild to grow up without a mother? I checked with Elias to see if it was true. It wasn't. It was another manipulation, another lie to make me feel guilty. I got so angry that I tore the letter into 1,000 pieces. I received calls from distant relatives begging me to stop the legal process. Eleanor, they're your children, they all said. Family forgives, family supports. How can you let them go to prison? And I always responded the same way. If you care so much, then you help them. You give them money. You forgive them. I have nothing left to give them. Most of them cut off communication after that. They didn't really want to help. They just wanted me to go back to being the silent victim. Denise remained my rock. She visited me every week with home-cooked food. She told me neighborhood gossip to distract me. She hugged me when I needed to cry. You're the bravest woman I know, she told me one afternoon. Many people would have given in to family pressure, but you stood firm in what was right. I don't know if I'm brave or just stupidly stubborn, I replied. Both, she smiled, and that's perfectly fine. One day I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered with caution. Mrs. Taylor, said a rough male voice. This is Ishmael's. I am one of your son Ryan's lenders. I felt my stomach drop. I have nothing to discuss with you, I said, trying to sound firm. Wait, don't hang up, he said quickly. I'm not threatening you. I just want to inform you of something. Ryan owes us $32,000, Ishmael continued, plus interest. It's $40,000 now. We know you are not responsible for paying his debts, but we want you to know that we are taking legal action against him, and we want to thank you. Thank me? I asked, confused. Yes, he replied. Your son lied to us. He told us you had given him permission to sell the house. He promised us he would pay us with that money. He deceived us just like he deceived you. Now that justice is punishing him, we can also sue him appropriately. So thank you for doing the right thing. He hung up without waiting for a response. I stared at the phone, stunned. Even the criminal loan sharks themselves recognized that Ryan was a liar and a thief. Even they respected what I was doing. It was a strange but powerful validation. If even people from the criminal world thought my children had crossed an unforgivable line, then I was definitely in the right. Finally, the day I had been waiting for arrived. Elias called me, excited. Eleanor, I have the keys. The house is yours again. Officially, you can go back whenever you want. I couldn't believe it. After everything that had happened, after months of suffering, I finally had my home back. Shall we go now? Elias asked. I want to accompany you. Denise also wanted to come. The three of us drove together in Elias's car. When we turned onto my street and I saw the house, my eyes filled with tears. There was my home, the place where I had raised my children, where I had lived with my husband, where I had built a life. The sold sign was gone. In its place was a quiet silence. Elias handed me the keys. Go ahead, he said, smiling. It's yours. I walked toward the door, my legs trembling. I put the key in the lock. This time it turned perfectly. I twisted it and the door opened. I walked in slowly. The house was empty. Of course, the businessman had taken his furniture, but the walls were still there. The floors I had walked on for 32 years, the ceilings that had protected my family. I walked through every room crying, the bedroom where my children slept when they were small, the kitchen where I had prepared thousands of meals, the living room where we had celebrated Christmases and birthdays. Everything was empty but full of memories at the same time. Denise hugged me. It's over, she whispered. You won, Eleanor. You got back what was yours. I stood in the middle of the empty living room and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. It wasn't complete happiness. There was still pain, there were still scars, but it was peace. The peace of knowing that I had fought and won, that I hadn't allowed myself to be destroyed, that I had survived. The first days back in my house were bittersweet. On one hand, being in my own space again was liberating. I no longer had to share a bathroom. I no longer listened to other people's conversations through thin walls. I no longer lived with the constant anxiety of not having my own place. But on the other hand, the empty house was a constant reminder of everything I had lost, not just the furniture, but also the innocence of believing that my family was unbreakable. Denise helped me get secondhand furniture, a Linux bed, a worn but comfortable sofa, a small table for the kitchen. Nothing luxurious, but enough to live with dignity. Eventually, you'll be able to buy better things, she told me, while we assembled an inexpensive bookshelf, when your children start paying you back what they owe you. If they ever pay, I replied with skepticism. Elias kept me informed about the progress of the criminal case. The district attorney's office had accumulated overwhelming evidence. The forged signatures, the testimonies, the text messages where Ryan and Melissa planned everything. The trial will be quick, he told me during a meeting. Their lawyers are trying to negotiate a reduced sentence. They will probably agree to plead guilty in exchange for less time in prison. And if they don't accept, I asked, then they'll go to a full trial and likely receive longer sentences, Elias explained. The evidence is so solid that it would be stupid of them not to negotiate, but we already know your children aren't very smart when it comes to making decisions. He was right about that. If they had been smart, they would never have thought they could get away with robbing me so obviously. One afternoon, while I was cleaning the house, the doorbell rang. I cautiously peered through the window. It was Melissa. She was alone, without lawyers or anyone else. She looked terrible. She had messy hair, wrinkled clothes, and a face swollen from crying. I didn't open the door. "Mom, please," she shouted from outside. I know you're there. I just need 5 minutes. 5 minutes and I'll leave, please. Something in her voice made me hesitate. Against my better judgment, I opened the door, but I stood in the threshold. I didn't let her in. 5 minutes, I said coldly, and if you try to manipulate me again, I'm calling the police. Melissa nodded desperately. I won't manipulate you. I just came to tell you the truth. The real truth. I looked at her with distrust, but said nothing. She took a deep breath. Ryan dragged me into this, she began, her voice trembling. I didn't want to sell the house, I swear to you. But he convinced me. He told me he was in danger, that the loan sharks were going to kill him if he didn't pay. He made me feel like you were on a trip, enjoying yourself while we were suffering. He made me feel like it was fair to take what was rightfully ours. I crossed my arms. No one forced you, Melissa. You chose to betray me. I know, she cried. I know, and I hate myself for it. Every day I wake up and hate myself. But you have to believe me, Mom. I didn't know Ryan had forged your signature. I thought you really had given him permission. When I found out he had lied, it was already too late. I was already neck deep in it. And the money you received? I asked. The $15,000 you went and spent in Cancun while I was sleeping on a couch? Melissa lowered her head, ashamed. That was horrible of me. I have no excuse. I was angry with you. I thought you had abandoned us by going on a trip while we were having problems. I know it sounds stupid now. I know you deserved that trip. You worked your whole life for it, but at that moment all I saw was that you were happy and I was miserable and I wanted to punish you. At least you're honest now, I said bitterly. Mom, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, Melissa continued. I know what we did was unforgivable, but I beg you, drop the charges against me. I will go to therapy. I will work and pay you back every last cent. I will spend the rest of my life compensating you. But please don't send me to jail. I'm 26. If I go to prison, my life is over. I looked at her in silence for a long moment. Part of me wanted to believe her. I wanted to think that my daughter, unlike my son, had salvation. But another part of me, the part that had learned to protect itself, knew that this was another manipulation, perhaps more subtle, more elaborate, but manipulation nonetheless. Melissa, I said finally, I can't drop the charges. I already explained to you. The criminal charges are brought by the state, not by me. It's no longer in my hands. But you can talk to the prosecutor, she insisted. You can tell him you don't want me prosecuted. Your opinion matters. Please, Mom. I beg you. I shook my head. Even if I could, I wouldn't. Because you're not really remorseful, Melissa. You're scared of the consequences, which is not the same thing. If you hadn't been caught, you would still be living your happy life without thinking about me for a second. That's not true, she protested. No, I asked. Then why didn't you come before? Why did you wait until the sentence was handed down to come and beg me? Why didn't you look for me when I was sleeping on Denise's couch? Why didn't you help me when I ran out of money to eat? You're coming now because it suits you, not because you genuinely care about me. Melissa had no answer for that. Your 5 minutes are up, I said, opening the door wider. Leave, Melissa, and don't come back. But Mom, she started to say. I interrupted her with a firm voice. I'm no longer your mother. You gave up that title when you betrayed me. Now I'm just the person you tried to destroy, and I'm going to watch justice do its job. Go. Melissa left crying, but I felt no pity, only weariness. That night I couldn't sleep. Melissa's words spun in my head. They made me wonder if I was being too harsh, if I should give her a chance. I called Elias at 2 a.m. Sorry for calling so late, I apologized. I needed to talk to someone. No problem, he replied in a sleepy voice. What happened? I told him about Melissa's visit, her pleas, my doubts. Elias listened in silence and then spoke with clarity. Eleanor, you know what the problem is with people like your children. They only feel remorse when they're caught. Melissa didn't come to ask for your forgiveness when they left you on the street. She came when she realized she was going to prison. That's not genuine remorse. It's panic over the consequences. You're right, I admitted. Besides, Elias continued, think about this. If you forgive her now, what message are you sending her? That she can betray you, steal from you, humiliate you, and in the end, if she cries enough, everything is forgiven. You would be teaching her that there are no real consequences for her actions. You would be doing her more harm than good. I never thought of it that way, I said. The best mothers are not the ones who protect their children from consequences, Elias declared. They are the ones who let them face the consequences so they can learn. You're not being cruel to Melissa, you're being the mother she needs, one who finally teaches her that actions have results. Thank you, Elias, I whispered. I needed to hear that. That's what I'm here for, he replied. Now try to sleep. Tomorrow's another day. 2 more months passed. The day of the final sentencing arrived. This time it was different. It wasn't a preliminary hearing. It was the definitive sentence. Ryan and Melissa had agreed to plead guilty in exchange for a reduction in sentence, but they still had to appear before the judge to hear the official sentence. I sat in the courtroom with Denise beside me. Elias was at the plaintiff's table. The judge entered, and we all stood. Ryan and Melissa were pale, trembling. The judge reviewed the documents and began to speak. This has been one of the most disturbing cases I've handled in my career, he said in a grave voice. The betrayal of children toward their mother, the abuse of trust, the calculated cruelty. Everything is irrefutably documented. Ryan Villegas and Melissa Villegas, he continued, looking directly at them. You pleaded guilty to document fraud, signature forgery, and misappropriation of funds. You have agreed to restitution of the stolen funds to your mother with interest, and now I must issue a sentence. The room fell into absolute silence. You could hear a pin drop. Ryan Villegas, I sentence you to 4 years in prison, the judge said, slamming the gavel. Ryan collapsed in his chair. His lawyer held him. Melissa Villegas, I sentence you to 2.5 years in prison. Melissa screamed and began to cry hysterically. Both will serve their sentence without the possibility of parole for the first year, the judge added. And when you are released, you will have a permanent criminal record. I hope, the judge concluded, that you use this time to reflect on what you did, and I hope that when you are released, you will be better people than you are today. But above all, I hope that Mrs. Taylor can finally find peace knowing that justice has been served. He slammed the gavel one last time. Court is adjourned. The guards led Ryan and Melissa away in handcuffs. Melissa looked at me one last time before leaving. Her eyes pleaded for forgiveness, compassion, something. But I only looked at her in silence, not with hatred, not with satisfaction, just with the calm of someone who knows she did the right thing. Denise hugged me tightly. It's over, she whispered. It's finally over. Yes, I replied. I can finally breathe. The months after the sentencing were strange. For the first time in almost a year, I didn't have to fight, I didn't have to go to court, I didn't have to deal with lawyers, documents, or hearings. The battle was over. I had won, but the victory didn't feel the way I thought it would. There were no fireworks or celebration, just a strange silence and a feeling of emptiness I didn't know how to fill. I returned to my routine. I worked at the dental clinic every day. I returned to my house, now modestly furnished, but with everything necessary. I cooked for myself, watched television alone, slept alone. The house I had recovered felt too big and too silent. Memories lived in every corner. Ryan learning to walk in that living room, Melissa doing her homework at the kitchen table, my husband reading the newspaper in his favorite armchair that no longer existed. Denise noticed my melancholy. Eleanor, you won back everything you want to recover, she told me one afternoon over coffee. Your house, your dignity, justice. Why do you look so sad? I don't know, I admitted. I guess I thought I would feel different, that I would feel whole again. But I just feel tired and empty. It's normal, she said softly. You went through a huge trauma. Justice doesn't erase the pain. It just closes the chapter. She was right. Justice had closed the legal chapter, but the emotional chapter was still open. I was still a mother without children, a 62-year-old woman who had lost her family. Yes, they had betrayed me. Yes, they deserved to be in prison. But that didn't change the fact that my life felt incomplete without the illusion of having a family that loved me. One afternoon, I received a letter. It came from the prison where Melissa was. I looked at it for hours without opening it. What could she tell me that she hadn't already said? More manipulations, more pleas. Finally, with trembling hands, I opened it. The letter was long, handwritten in shaky script. It said, Mom, I know you probably won't read this. I know I don't deserve your attention, but I need to tell you something I should have said a long time ago. You were right about everything. I continued reading, my heart pounding. You were right when you said I wasn't really remorseful. I was scared of the consequences, not remorseful for my actions. But now, after 4 months locked up here, I finally understand what we did to you. I finally understand the pain we caused you. Every night I wake up thinking about you sleeping on that couch, about you eating the cheapest things from the supermarket, about you crying alone with no one to help you. And I hate myself more than I thought it was possible to hate myself. The letter continued for several pages. Melissa spoke of the therapy she was taking in prison, of how she was finally facing her own problems with codependency on Ryan, of how she had spent her life following her brother's plans without questioning anything. Ryan was always manipulative, ever since we were kids, and I was always his accomplice because I was afraid of being alone. But that doesn't excuse me. I chose to betray you. I chose money over you, and I will live with that guilt for the rest of my life. I'm not writing to ask for your forgiveness. The letter ended. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I'm writing so you know that I finally understand. I finally see the monster I became. And even if I get out of here in 2 years, I will never be the same person. This prison is not my real punishment. My punishment is knowing that I destroyed the only person who truly loved me unconditionally. I love you, Mom, even though I no longer have the right to say it. Melissa. I finished reading with tears in my eyes. I didn't know what to feel. Was this remorse real, or was it another elaborate act? I no longer knew if I could trust my own instincts regarding my children. They had deceived me so completely before. How could I know if this was genuine? I put the letter in a drawer without replying. I wasn't ready to forgive. Maybe I never would be. Ryan also tried to contact me, but his letters were different, full of rage and resentment. This is your fault, he wrote in one. You put me in here. You destroyed your own family for pride. When I get out, I'm never going to forgive you for this. I tore up his letters without finishing them. Ryan was still the same, unable to accept responsibility, always blaming others for his own decisions. One afternoon, while organizing old papers, I found a photograph of when my children were small. Ryan must have been about 6, Melissa 4. They were hugging, smiling at the camera. They looked so innocent, so pure. I wondered at what point everything had gone wrong. At what moment those sweet children turned into adults capable of such cruelty. Had it been my fault? Had I raised them wrong? I called a therapist. I needed help processing all this. During the sessions, the therapist made me understand something important. Eleanor, she said, you can be an imperfect mother and still not deserve what they did to you. Even if you made mistakes raising them, which every mother does, that doesn't justify them robbing you and leaving you on the street. They are two separate things. Your value as a mother does not determine whether or not you deserved the abuse. Those words freed me from a guilt I didn't know I was carrying. I'd spent months questioning myself, wondering what I had done wrong, but the truth was that my children were adults responsible for their own decisions. I hadn't taught them to steal. I hadn't taught them to forge documents. They chose that path alone, and the consequences were only theirs. I began to rebuild my life in small but significant ways. I joined a group of older women who met every week to knit and chat. I met Evelyn, my cousin from Spain, who had come to visit for a month. We became very close. She understood my pain in a way few people could. Biological family is not always the true family, she told me one night. The real family is the one you choose, the one that chooses you. I also started traveling again. Small trips at first, a weekend at the beach, a visit to a nearby colonial town. Each trip was a declaration, a way of telling myself that my life wasn't over, that I still had things to discover, places to see, experiences to live, that Ryan and Melissa hadn't taken away my capacity for happiness. One day, 6 months after the sentencing, I received a notification from the bank. $500 had been deposited into my account. It was Melissa's first restitution payment. Apparently, she had gotten a job in prison and was using her salary to start paying me back. It was a ridiculously small amount compared to what she owed me, but it was something. It was a start. Ryan, of course, hadn't paid anything. I looked at the deposit for a long time. $500. It was almost insulting after everything they had taken from me, but it was also a sign that maybe, just maybe, Melissa was really changing, or at least trying. I didn't forgive her, not yet, but I kept the deposit slip as evidence that some people, unlike others, eventually try to repair the damage they cause. That night, I sat in my living room on the secondhand sofa I had bought in the house I had recovered with so much effort. I looked around and realized something important. This house no longer felt the way it had before. It was no longer the home full of happy memories of a perfect family. It was something else now. It was my refuge, my fortress, the place I had fought to recover, not out of nostalgia, but out of principle, out of dignity, out of justice. And I realized that maybe, just maybe, I no longer needed this house in the same way as before. Before, I needed it because it represented my family, my past, my identity as a mother and wife. Now I only needed it as proof that no one could take what was mine. But once I had that proof, once I had proven to myself that I could win, maybe I could let it go. Maybe I could start completely anew. A full year passed since the day I returned from Europe and found my life destroyed. A year since I saw the sold sign in my yard. A year since I cried in the rain surrounded by boxes with my belongings. It felt like a lifetime. I felt like a different person, and in a way, I was. The Eleanor who had returned from that trip was naive, trusting, full of illusions about her family. The Eleanor who existed now was different. Stronger, wiser, more solitary too, but with a solitude I had learned to embrace. One morning I woke up with absolute clarity. I knew exactly what I had to do. I called Elias at his office. "I want to sell the house," I told him without preamble. There was silence on the other end. "Are you sure, Eleanor? You fought so hard to get it back." "I know," I replied, "and it was important to get it back, but I don't need it anymore. This house is full of ghosts. I need to start from scratch in a place that is only mine, without painful memories." "I understand perfectly," Elias said softly. "In fact, I think it's a very healthy decision. Do you have any idea what you're going to do with the money?" "I'm going to buy a small apartment," I replied. "Something comfortable but manageable. And with what's left, I'm going to travel. I'm going to finish the tour of Europe that Ryan and Melissa interrupted. I'm going to live the life I deserve." "That sounds perfect," Elias said. "I'll help you with all the paperwork." The house sold quickly. A young couple with 2 small children bought it. They paid me $220,000, a fair price. When I signed the papers, I felt a mixture of sadness and liberation. I was closing a chapter of my life forever, but I was also opening a new one. And this time I was in complete control. No one could take it away from me. I bought a 2-bedroom apartment in a modern building near downtown. It was bright, with large windows and no previous history. Every piece of furniture I bought, I chose. Every picture on the walls reflected my taste. There were no ghosts there, no memories of betrayal. It was a space completely mine. I moved in with Denise's help, who cried when I told her I was leaving the neighborhood. "I'm going to miss you so much," she said, hugging me tightly. "You'll come visit me," I replied. "And I'll come visit you. You won't get rid of me that easily." Denise had been my salvation during the worst moments. I could never repay her for everything she did for me, but I could make sure she knew how much she meant to me. "You're the sister I chose," I told her, "the real family I found in the middle of the disaster." She smiled with tears in her eyes. "And you're the bravest woman I know." With the apartment established and fully paid for, I had almost $50,000 left. It was more money than I had ever had. I decided something radical. I quit my job at the dental clinic. I no longer needed that income. And frankly, after everything I'd been through, I deserved to rest. I deserved to enjoy myself. I deserved to live without the constant stress of making ends meet. I hired a travel agency and planned a 6-month tour of Europe. This time I would go slower, enjoying every city: Paris, Rome, Barcelona, Prague, Vienna, Amsterdam, all the places I had rushed through the first time, and many more. I booked modest but comfortable hotels. I didn't need luxury. I just needed freedom. I needed to prove to myself that I could be happy alone, that I could build a fulfilling life without depending on anyone. 2 weeks before my trip, I received another letter from Melissa. This time she was asking permission to call me. There was a note from the prison director attached explaining that Melissa had completed a rehabilitation program and was showing genuine progress. "I consider her an appropriate candidate for supervised family contact if you allow it," the director wrote. I hesitated for days. Finally, I decided to allow one call, just one. On the scheduled day, my phone rang at 3 in the afternoon. I answered, my heart pounding. Mom, I heard Melissa's voice. It sounded different, more mature, more broken. Hello, Melissa, I replied in a neutral voice. There was a long silence. I could hear her breathing raggedly. Thank you for agreeing to speak with me, she finally said. You had no obligation to do so. No, I didn't, I confirmed. Then why did you agree? She asked, her voice trembling. Because I needed to know if your change is real or if it's another manipulation, I replied honestly, because I need to close this chapter completely before I move on with my life. It's real, Mom, she said firmly. I know I have no way to prove it to you with words, but I've been paying you every month. I've been going to therapy. I've been facing things about myself that I never wanted to see. I learned that I was always a follower. Melissa continued. I always let Ryan make the decisions. I always sought external approval instead of having my own values. And when I betrayed the only person who loved me unconditionally, I finally hit rock bottom. I finally saw myself for who I really was, and it disgusted me. I listened to her in silence. Her words sounded genuine, but I had learned not to trust easily. Melissa, I said finally, I'm glad you're working on yourself, truly, but you need to understand something. Forgiveness is not something I can give you now. Maybe I never will. What you did to me was devastating. It almost destroyed me completely. I survived, but I carry scars that will never disappear. I understand, Mom, she whispered. I don't expect your forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I'm truly sorry and that I will spend the rest of my life trying to be better. When you get out of prison in a year, I continued, you're going to have to rebuild your life without me. I'm not going to be your safety net. I'm not going to rescue you from the consequences of your decisions. You have to learn to stand on your own, just as I had to learn. I know, she replied. And Ryan? I asked. Are you still following him? No, Mom, she said firmly. I cut off all contact with him. I learned that my relationship with Ryan was toxic. He is never going to change, but I can. We talked for a few more minutes. I told her about my new apartment, about my planned trip. Melissa cried when she found out I was going back to Europe. I'm so glad you didn't let us take that away from you, she said. I'm glad you're still fighting for your happiness. When we hung up, I felt strangely at peace. I hadn't forgiven Melissa. I probably never would completely, but I could see that at least she was trying to change, and that was more than I could say for Ryan. The day of my departure arrived. Denise, Elias, and Evelyn accompanied me to the airport. I can't believe you're actually doing it, Denise said, smiling. After everything you've been through, you're going to fulfill your dream again. It's not the same dream, I replied. It's a better one because now I'm doing it with full knowledge of who I am and what I'm worth. Elias hugged me. Eleanor, it was an honor to represent you. You were the bravest client I ever had. You gave me back my life, Elias, I told him with gratitude. I'll never be able to truly repay you for that. He smiled. You already paid me, and besides, seeing someone fully recover from a tragedy like yours is payment enough. Evelyn handed me a small diary. To write your adventures, she said, and so that when you return, you can remember that this time, every moment was yours and yours alone. On the plane, as we took off, I looked out the window watching my city shrink. I thought about everything that had happened in a year. The unbearable pain, the betrayal, the humiliation, the fight, the justice, the recovery, and finally, the liberation. I wasn't the same woman who had boarded a plane a year ago, full of illusions about her perfect family. I was someone completely different, someone stronger, more independent, more aware of my own value. I took out the diary Evelyn had given me and wrote on the first page, Today, my true life begins, not the life others chose for me, not the life defined by my role as a mother or wife, but my life, the life of Eleanor, a 63-year-old woman who lost everything, fought to get it back, and decided that she deserved more than just surviving. She decided to live, to truly live. I closed the diary and smiled for the first time in a long time. I wasn't afraid of the future. I didn't have resentment consuming me. I didn't have pain paralyzing me. I had clarity. I had freedom. I had peace. My children had taken my house, my money, my trust in family, but they hadn't been able to take my spirit. They hadn't been able to destroy my capacity to get back up. And in the end, that was all that truly mattered. The rest of my life awaited me, and this time, every second would be mine.